Nyalche Chembo Toto Ningmi Chang, Donen Manum Chembo, Nyalche Dankara Dargam Santo, Sherman, Stumba Turje Janla Kishom Sir Nishan Roar Zerni Jangamsa, Jawar Tugishan, Yelaman, Jimmy Banzojala, Soran. Gonjo Toban Pora Shinjilo, Gonjo Toban Pora Shinjilo, Gonjo Toban Pora Shinjilo.
Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching. Today we continue our study of the Mahayana Shurangama Sutra. As you all know, the Mahayana Shurangama Sutra is extremely renowned in the Han region. Moreover, relying on this sutra, countless thousands upon thousands of people have already attained enlightenment. Not only is this a sutra with profound theoretical depth, it also possesses particularly great blessing power in its pith instructions. Relying on this sutra, many great masters have journeyed to the Pure Lands. Such an extraordinary sutra. Of course, each being's merit and karmic connections are not quite the same. I think in other places, perhaps the Shurangama Sutra is not so well known, including in our Tibetan region. Recently, some Khenpos who should be considered among those with the highest learning here asked me what I've been teaching lately. I said, I'm teaching the wish-fulfilling treasury. Then they said, wow, that's wonderful. What else are you teaching? I said, the practices of a bodhisattva. That's also very good. What else? I said the Shurangama Sutra. What is the Shurangama Sutra in Tibetan? I said if we translate Shurangama Sutra directly, it's this particular sutra. Then they asked, is this sutra in the Tibetan canon? Is it a Hinayana or Mahayana Sutra? Many had basically never heard of it. So sometimes I feel that these sutras of the Buddha perhaps are not so well known in certain places. The Shurangama Sutra in the Deje Tibetan canon comprises about 2 volumes. Later, National Teacher Chankya and others translated it. It should be more than 200 years from now. The translation into Tibetan should be more than 200 years old. At that time, 3 years ago, when we first began explaining Emperor Qianlong's preface, we discussed this, didn't we? It should have been Prince Zhuang at that time. Prince Zhuang was quite an important figure in the entire translation work. He was under Emperor Qianlong. There's also mention in his preface, and also National Teacher Chankya. They should have begun translating in 1752, continuing until 1763, taking approximately 11 years, first from Chinese to Manchu, then Manchu to Mongolian, then Mongolian to Tibetan. 4 languages, just the Shurangama Sutra alone in 4 languages already took approximately 11 years. So up to now it should have been this long, more than 200 years. But speaking honestly, for more than 200 years, regardless of which lineage in the Tibetan region, in monasteries or among ordinary people, this sutra is not very well known. Among the common people in the Tibetan region, the more famous ones are, for example, the Sutra of the 1,000 Buddhas of the Fortunate Aeon, the Golden Light Sutra, the Perfection of Wisdom in 8,000 lines. These are very famous among the people. They don't necessarily know the content within, but they have all heard of these few sutras. If kept in the home, there will be favorable weather, abundant offspring, and so forth, various worldly purposes. So they go from house to house, often requesting these few sutras. But regarding the Shurangama Sutra, in the Tibetan region indeed, not many people know about it. This is also a fact. I wonder if many people will promote it in the future. In Tibetan, it's hard to say, like National Teacher Chankya and Emperor Qianlong from a certain perspective. Their worldly prestige and transcendental accomplishments should be incomparable. But what they translated and promoted also didn't really... I heard that at the time, after translating into Mongolian and Manchu, they also did some promotion in those places. But regarding the promotion, it's also possible, I don't know how well it was promoted in other ethnic languages, it's not particularly clear. At that time, there should have been someone under Prince Zhuang or around him, a Dharma master called Master Tongli. At first, he seemed to be teaching Zhao Guang's orthodox commentary on the Shurangama Sutra. But later, he felt there were some particular contents within that he wasn't particularly satisfied with. After this, it seems Prince Zhuang also had this intention. Later it said that Master Tongli spent a total of 20 years and later completed the palm commentary on the Shurangama Sutra. This should have been very famous during the Qing dynasty. He said the meaning of palm commentary on the Shurangama Sutra. In his own commentary, he also said this is like an amala fruit in our palm. Very clear and easy to understand, apparent at a glance, such a designation. Actually, the Han region is also like this, whether it's the palm commentary on the Shurangama Sutra or the orthodox commentary on the Shurangama Sutra. In our Tibetan region, whether it's the Great Vehicle Commentary or the Excellent Vehicle Commentary, there are many different designations. At that time, the palm commentary on the Shurangama Sutra should have taken him more than 20 years. Later, Master Tongli also mentioned his earlier palm commentary on the Lotus Sutra also took more than 20 years. Later, the palm commentary on the Shurangama Sutra also took more than 20 years. It was like a dream. These two palm commentaries in his life were, for him, two extremely important treatises. In the Han region, they should be considered quite famous, but Master Tongli and others also promoted them in various different monasteries. At the time of promotion, the promotion in Chinese should have been quite successful, but for the others, Manchu and Mongolian, I'm not particularly clear. Here where we are, I don't know. Now it seems there aren't many Mongolians. Previously there were quite a few Mongolians. There were some Mongolians. Now I don't know whether the Shurangama Sutra is famous in Mongolian or not. It's not particularly clear. In English there are also versions, but they're also not as famous as in Chinese. At the beginning we also made some introductions. Generally speaking, Chinese is indeed very famous in the Han region, including now everyone says this is very good. But actually, how many people truly teach the Shurangama Sutra now? I don't know. Logically speaking, in various monasteries there should be those who teach the Shurangama Sutra. Whether great masters or abbots, there should be some. But I don't know the specific situation. Actually, many Dharma friends here with us should be able to teach these particularly famous sutras from the Han region. For example, when we previously taught the Lotus Sutra, many Dharma teachers, from beginning to end, should have studied quite diligently. Later, when we taught the Vimalakirti Sutra, many people also, from beginning to end, everyone studied and contemplated very systematically. It should be very good. As for the Shurangama Sutra, I don't know how long it will take. If we teach it, it should be very good, but I don't know if there will be people to listen. Because now in many inland areas, the atmosphere of study and contemplation is not so good. Honestly speaking, some practice centers still haven't truly opened up. Some might be focused on tourism and sightseeing, for example. There's also some atmosphere of commercial activity. And there are some meditation halls in some relatively quiet monasteries. They might not be open. There are also such situations. So we have indeed cultivated a group of talents. Now there are so many young, wise and compassionate people. Whether there are or not, I don't know, but how much they can accomplish is not very clear. Perhaps this is also a kind of contribution to Buddhism or a kind of offering, but whether it can specifically benefit beings is not particularly clear. I remember previously when His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche was alive, I think I told you all about this. Once when His Holiness was coming up here fearing altitude sickness, he stayed in Wenchuan, then came up again to Mialuo. When staying in Mialuo, we stayed in the town up there because we arrived quite early. In the afternoon when His Holiness was resting, then several of us who were close to His Holiness went down about 1 or 2 kilometers to a place where across from us was something that looked like a monastery, but after going in, it turned out to be a guest house. This was opened by a Tibetan owner. This Tibetan owner said, "I've been running this place for a year or 2. Business is not very good. There's no business. But with my own money, I invested 1 million myself. I borrowed 2 million from the government." I forget the exact amount. Anyway, although business isn't good, I've left the Tibetan people a very good guest house. I've peacefully created a very good guest house. I was thinking in my heart at the time, if business isn't good, what have you left for the Tibetan people? Your own business isn't good. This was my impression at the time, what he himself said. Because when running a guest house, business should be good. Otherwise, whether for the Tibetan people or anyone else, it might not necessarily be a contribution if guest house business isn't good, just like what I'm saying. Now, here with us, we have indeed also cultivated some talents, but I don't know if there will be any use for them in the future. This I'm not particularly clear about. Just like that Tibetan owner said, I've left the Tibetan people a very good guest house, but business isn't good. He had a kind of intense confidence in his people. I'm also not particularly clear about this. Just like this, here with us indeed, whether the Shurangama Sutra or the previous few sutras, everyone has a very good lineage transmission. Especially the Vimalakirti Sutra and the Lotus Sutra, we still have particularly good lineage transmissions. This lineage transmission should be very precious. If there are opportunities in the future, I hope everyone should also propagate them well. Now, whether in monasteries or in other practice centers, propagating these sutras and treatises is extremely important. We know that the Shurangama Sutra 3 years ago, I also explained to everyone, its propagation in the Han region was indeed not easy either. In those days, Master Ji of the Tiantai school, when interacting with an Indian monk, it seems some of his meditation experiences, he said, were clearly explained in the Shurangama Sutra. Then he very much wanted to obtain the Shurangama Sutra. In the Tiantai school area, there's a sutra bowing platform. At that time, Master Ji, for 18 years, faced toward India and bowed to Buddha, hoping this sutra would come to the eastern land. But when he demonstrated passing away, it still hadn't come later. Paramiti heard that Master Ji had this aspiration, and many people had such longing. Moreover, the conditions for spreading this Dharma had ripened. He tried many times to find ways to bring this sutra here, but in between, because at that time Nalanda Monastery in India regarded it as an especially precious national treasure, it could not be transmitted outside, so several times he was unsuccessful. Later he wrote it on extremely thin paper, or it said that at that time India had a kind of craft extremely thin. Some say it was goat skin, some say sheep skin, but anyway, he put it inside there. Then after taking it, he hid it by cutting open the flesh of his own arm, then hiding it inside. After hiding it, he sewed it up. Then he came to the Han region in Guangzhou. When he began to open it in that place inside, it was also perfectly intact. At that time, Prime Minister Fang Rong and others, they also began the sutra opening ceremony in that place. It should have been in the year 705 CE. Around that time they began. At that time, it should have been the Tang dynasty, when Empress Wu Zetian was in power. She placed great importance on Buddhism. It came like this in the beginning. But later, during the Tang dynasty, it seems commentaries on it were not particularly numerous. After the Song, Ming and Qing dynasties, many great masters who taught the Shurangama Sutra were everywhere. After this, in the Han region, it indeed became particularly flourishing. There was a Master Hanshan who said, without reading the Shurangama, one doesn't understand the key to confusion and awakening in mind, cultivation. Without reading the Lotus, one doesn't understand the Tathagata's compassionate heart in saving the world. Without reading the Avatamsaka, one doesn't understand Buddhism's richness. Everyone was very clear about this before. So if we don't read the Shurangama Sutra, we also won't understand during our practice whether we are confused or awakened this issue. If we don't read the Lotus Sutra, when the Buddha was in his causal grounds, how he saved the world, and at that time with his supreme compassion, how he protected beings, if we don't read the Avatamsaka Sutra, then Buddhism's richness. Here, richness doesn't mean Buddhists are wealthy. It should refer to Buddhism's cosmology, the vast and boundless entire worldview. We would know nothing about it if we don't read the Avatamsaka Sutra. More than 2,500 years ago, in the Avatamsaka Sutra, the Buddha described the entire universe in all its various forms, or the richness of Mahayana bodhisattvas, the merit of bodhicitta, the various benefits of bodhicitta, and so forth. We would know nothing about these. So the reason the Han region has such a lineage tradition is also like this. These three sutras are also extremely important. We have already taught the Lotus Sutra. We have already begun teaching the Shurangama Sutra. Just yesterday someone said to me, could you please teach us the Avatamsaka Sutra? It sounds quite simple to say, but how could it be so simple? While I was teaching the exam, someone came running over. I wondered what it was about. He said, hey, what? Could you please teach us the Avatamsaka Sutra? The Avatamsaka Sutra is not so simple. Now let's formally begin the Shurangama Sutra. The Shurangama Sutra teaches that today we discuss the unobstructed nature of seeing without any obstacles. This is the main meaning we'll explain. Next it says, Ananda addressed the Buddha, world-honored one, if this seeing nature is necessarily mine and not others, when the Tathagata and I observe the treasure halls of the 4 celestial kings dwelling in the sun and moon palaces, this seeing extends completely, pervading the Saha realm. Here he says that Ananda continues addressing the Buddha, world-honored one, I know this seeing nature of mine is... Because previously it was explained that it's not outside. There are no external objects. I know it belongs to myself. It should be within my own state of experience. There are no truly existing external phenomena. The outside is empty. But when the Tathagata and I went together to observe the various sublime treasures of the 4 celestial kings, these sublime treasure halls, various jeweled palaces, magnificent treasure halls, we went to see the various palaces of the 4 celestial kings. And at the same time we also saw the sun palace and moon palace. Some commentaries mention the sun palace spans 51 yojanas, the moon palace spans 49 yojanas. Some individual commentaries also explain it this way. And some other commentaries at this point quote from the Sutra on the Origin of the World, which we used before. From the Sutra on the Origin of the World, there are some descriptions of winds, for example. The sustaining wind prevents this world from falling. The dwelling wind maintains stability. Then the harmonizing wind makes the entire world harmonious, and also the gathering wind and traveling wind. 5 types of winds are described. The names are somewhat different from those in the wish-fulfilling treasury, but some of their functions seem quite similar. Some also explain it this way, but regardless, Ananda's question at that time was, we went to the 4 celestial kings, then all the external worlds there we had already seen. Then once again we saw everything completely, the entire pervasive and complete vision, and it pervaded the Saha realm, pervading the entire Saha world. The southern continent probably mainly focused on the 4 great continents. His mention of Saha here means when reaching the 4 celestial kings, the entire 4 great continents were visible at a glance. Everything could be seen clearly. This section mainly explains that at that time, Ananda's seeing, his seeing nature, was vast and boundless, particularly expansive. Because upon reaching the 4 celestial kings, not to mention the 4 celestial kings, even reaching Mount Everest, one can see the surrounding world. Everything is visible at a glance. One can see quite clearly. So the entire world he could still see very extensively. Then returning to the hermitage, seeing only the monastery buildings in the pure meditation chamber, but glimpsing only the eaves and corridors, he said, later returning to Jetavana Hermitage, the Jetavana Hermitage in India, then seeing only the monastery, only seeing the monastery. Monastery refers to the gardens and temples of that time. Our great assembly hall is generally called Gonka Rawa. Gonka Rawa is also called a monastery. It's a great lecture hall, a great sutra hall. Then here, when he reached Jetavana Hermitage, his field of vision also diminished somewhat. Then when reaching the monastery, his field of vision also diminished greatly. Then continuing further, pure meditation chamber. Pure meditation chamber generally refers to a meditation room. In Tibetan, it refers to when entering meditation in the meditation room. That is to say, here is where one's mind becomes purified, such a retreat place, or what we call dormitories or meditation rooms. Some sources say it refers to a lecture hall, but it seems in Tibetan it refers to a retreat place. Some sources say it refers to a place for contemplation and purifying one's mind after hearing the Dharma. Such a lecture hall, but regardless, at that time he was in a small room, probably meditation room, is more accurate. first to Anathapindada's Jetavana hermitage, then to the great lecture hall, then to the meditation hall. At this time, but glimpsing only the eaves and corridors, he could only see the eaves, and also hear Wu probably means corridors, galleries. Perhaps from his retreat room he could only see the eaves and corridors. In this way, Ananda's field of vision also diminished greatly. Now his question arises. World-honored one, this seeing is like this. Its essence originally pervaded one realm. In this process, what I saw was like this. Originally, the essence I saw pervaded one realm, pervading the entire Saha world, pervading the entire world. The entire world seen from the four celestial kings looking down could be seen clearly and completely. Now in this room, it only fills one room. When I came to this pure meditation chamber, or to the monastery, or to his small meditation room, then what I could see only filled one room. My field of vision was limited to that small sutra hall. For example, when I went to the four celestial kings and just returned to this sutra hall, I felt, wow, this sutra hall is so small. Then when I go to my own small room, my wooden room, my field of vision became even smaller. In this case, just now my field of vision was outside and particularly vast, but now it's so small. So this seeing, now his doubt arises. Has this seeing contracted from large to small? Or have walls and buildings constrained and severed it? His use of the word "or" here, the Palm commentary on the Shurangama Sutra explains, is a word expressing doubt and questioning. He doubts. What was seen at the beginning then gradually diminished. Originally, the world was so vast now, the seeing inside this room is very, very small. Has my seeing already contracted? What was vast and boundless in the end became only so narrow. Has it contracted, or have walls and buildings constrained and severed it? Or is it that these walls and buildings are constraining me so that the external line of sight cannot be interrupted in between, severed in between? The meaning is, has my understanding diminished more and more? Or is it because these building walls and wood have already obstructed my line of sight? Exactly how is it? This is his question. He asks the Buddha, now I don't understand where this principle lies. I'm confused again now. I don't know what this principle actually is. I pray that you bestow great compassion and explain this for me. I pray that the Buddha will look upon me with care and with vast compassion explain this to me. From Ananda's understanding here, everyone should be very clear. On one hand, Ananda was someone who had not yet awakened at that time. Moreover, he generally appeared to follow the Vaibhashika school or was a Hinayana practitioner. For Hinayana practitioners, all cultivation seeks outwardly. There are still differences in this aspect. Mahayana seeks inwardly. Vajrayana seeks in the secret, going further toward the depths of mind. So in many of Ananda's questions the day before yesterday, we can discover what? Ananda was someone who particularly sought outwardly. There must be something outside his seeing. Here is actually primarily based on eyesight, because when he went to the four celestial kings, his eyes saw many things. Actually, the seeing nature of mind. He still didn't completely understand. At this time he felt that, oh, my seeing is actually so vast, but now I can't see anything. These are both seeing. Has my seeing contracted, or has it already been obstructed by other material things in between? So he treats this seeing as something truly existing. Then such seeing must have some truly existing thing to be established. This problem has always existed for Ananda. If we follow the cultivation methods of Mahayana and Vajrayana, our mind itself actually indeed has this luminous and aware aspect, but it is not truly existing, having shape, color, or form. It's not like that. The essence of mind is quite similar to space, but it differs from space. So the essence of our mind itself has awareness. And more importantly, the essence of mind is not something truly existing. If we accept mind as something truly existing, then no matter how we explain it, we probably can't explain it clearly. So the main characteristic of our Buddhism is not acknowledging things as truly existing in the ultimate sense, free from the four extremes and 8 elaborations in the conventional sense like dreams and illusions, or when you truly examine the essence of our mind, it fundamentally has no substantial entity. This point is very important. If we don't understand this point, this so-called seeing nature is still very difficult to find. The more we study, perhaps every day with different analogies, we might become like Ananda. Perhaps we're even worse than Ananda, because Ananda had the opportunity to be Shakyamuni Buddha's attendant, and finally was among those who attained. He should have attained the fruit of Arhat in that lifetime. According to the Lotus Sutra and some other sutras, actually Ananda was also a manifested saint, not truly an ordinary person with his own characteristics, slowly becoming an Arhat. It's not like that. So we should know Ananda was actually speaking on behalf of us, most of us. Might also have such grasping at true existence. Many people, today's materialists, when we speak of awakening, it seems like awakening is like opening this room already opened, or like the roof has broken. We are particularly, when practicing Phawa, we say, definitely, look, if it really doesn't work forcefully, insert kusha grass into my head. Actually, no matter how much you break open this head, whether you can awaken or not is also unknown. It's just a kind of sign, because many of us in our ordinary discussion still don't particularly understand Mahayana Buddhism, the most crucial essence of mind. If we take it as truly existing, no matter what we do, it won't work well. This is most crucial, because if we take mind as something truly existing and external objects as truly existing things, then saying it exists is not right. Saying it doesn't exist is also not right. Both existence and non-existence are also contradictory. Apart from these two other third category objects, cannot be found in this world either. Thus we might become very distressed. But if we have some pith instructions from Mahayana, Master's mind is not so complex. Of course, following the Sutra School's method of investigation and seeking indeed, one can find it. Actually, the Buddha is quite remarkable, because with each of Ananda's questions, when we don't know how to answer, the Buddha gives him a very good, skillful way to make him finally speechless. His final answer is also very wonderful and rare for us. This point we should all understand. So in this process, perhaps, cultivation and awakening, indeed, the Shurangama Sutra is a Dharma door for awakening, very important. But I personally think if one wants to awaken, whether reading Sutra school texts like Chan school books or Vajrayana tantric books most crucially, our own mind stream must be capable. Our mind must definitely merge with its essential nature. It's not external observation, but internal observation. For internal observation, we probably need some method of cultivation. This method must definitely follow some cultivation methods of our predecessor masters, practicing gradually. This is very important. A while ago, I also explained, according to the omniscient Longchen Rabjam, either one achieves through fragmentary instructions or one achieves through gradual instructions. But achieving through fragmentary instructions in today's degenerate age is very difficult. So if there is a gradual approach, just like what's explained in the words of my perfect teacher. So today I was thinking to myself in my room, each of us, if we want to awaken, probably won't awaken for no reason. But if we want to awaken truly, our mind must be cultivated. For mind cultivation, using the especially sublime instructional texts of predecessor masters as guidance, then when we pray and practice this, should be very good. Recently, I've been proofreading A Guide to the Words of My Perfect Teacher. Again, A Guide to the Words of My Perfect Teacher, translated quite clearly and understandably. In Tibetan, there's also nothing apart from extremely few words, no discrepancies. In this case, I suggest starting in May, using 100 days to study by ourselves. I see it's about 278 pages, not much. Our newly formatted book now has about 200 plus, less than 300 pages. At the front, there's a secret biography of Achak Rinpoche, compiled by Tenzin Rinpoche. This is also not much, but reading this is optional. Most crucially, the gradual progression that follows. Then in autumn, if no obstacles arise. I think this year, when we studied tantric teachings the other day, I mentioned studying the entering the way of the great vehicle. A Guide to the Words of My Perfect Teacher is also something for 2 years or 1 year. Everyone should study it. This might be the best method for us because A Guide to the Words of My Perfect Teacher contains specific meditation methods, the words of my perfect teacher, and all the tantric specific meditation methods, as well as the secret biographical methods of the lineage masters. So I have previously transmitted the lineage to everyone. Many Khenpos and Khenmos have taught it, how specifically to teach in the future, how specifically to receive the lineage in the future. I'm also considering. Now I have such a suggestion. If you feel you want to awaken indeed, this book is extremely good. Whether you study the Shurangama Sutra or the Wish-Fulfilling Treasury or other texts, perhaps our own minds should first emerge from the various worldly afflictions. To emerge, we need a method of practice. Then this practice should follow the deepest, most secret, and best kind of approach. If any of you don't want to look at it, there's no compulsion whatsoever. If you don't have the book, you can borrow it or find other ways. It should be possible. I don't know if there are any available now. In any case, starting from May 1st, study it once through by yourselves in 100 days, because our extracurricular books, apart from what we study here, everything else is free time. Ears not hearing matters outside the window, concentrating only on reading the books of sages. We should be like this. Things that happen elsewhere, here we can't hear about them, and hearing about them doesn't have much meaning anyway. Here where we are before famine appears, before war appears, before various plagues appear, let's first awaken. After awakening, then we won't be afraid of whatever happens in the world. So I think some of this is joking, some is sincere, perhaps for each person, just like what was told to Ananda yesterday. Actually, awakening is not external. It should be internal. For it to be internal, it requires a preliminary foundation beforehand. Otherwise, if we remain exactly the same as before with our minds caught in the 8 worldly concerns, then not to mention awakening, perhaps when we die, there won't be even a bit of change. So precious human life is hard to obtain if we don't have such practice guidance. Indeed, this year will be like this. Next year will also be like this. Apart from this, when we die, we may not necessarily have any realization of the true mind. So I feel that a guide to the words of my perfect teacher for everyone should be the most precious. In my own process of proofreading in the end, I was somewhat having already translated something like this. How wonderful this is. This is very precious. I thought this way several times at that time, so this time it should be. I remember it was translated around 2007. It's been more than 10 years. I haven't spoken about it this much before. I've mentioned it several times in class, but the reason I'm speaking about it, actually, now when we encounter various external circumstances, each of us internally really needs a place of refuge. If there's no place of refuge, no matter how much we study, sometimes indeed it may not be applicable. So on one hand, you study the 5 major treatises. On the other hand, look at some methods within this text, especially in A Guide to the Words of My Perfect Teacher. The sections on precious human life and some meditation methods in the front are somewhat extensive. The latter sections on impermanence of life, karma and its results, suffering of samsara, benefits of liberation, relying on spiritual friends. These are all passed through quite briefly. The most crucial sections that follow discuss refuge and bodhicitta. The latter sections on accumulating merit and purifying obscurations and confession are also discussed, but most crucially, its core essence. Precious human life, refuge, developing bodhicitta. These several aspects according to the pith instructions of Patrul Rinpoche and Nyoshu Longtok. Achuk Rinpoche said, I remember he mentions in the later text, it seems he received them twice. The first time he received them, it seems the latter part from refuge onwards or something was what he received. Then the second time he received them, everything was quite complete. Both the beginning and end were quite complete. So he recorded it. Moreover, his method of practice is direct. For example, when explaining bodhicitta, it's explained very meticulously, just like how foreigners write novels extremely detailed, how to visualize, how to do this and that. But the only thing is, there are some recitations inside that I didn't include. At the time, there were some recitations that actually should have been added. Some parts were added later, but some parts in the front, these could perhaps be added later to the Nyingthig liturgy. So now I'm not teaching the Shurangama Sutra that I should be teaching, but discussing a guide to the words of my perfect teacher that I shouldn't be teaching. I've spoken about it a bit. This is still necessary. Otherwise, we'd be like Ananda every day, no matter what we're teaching today. One question, tomorrow another question. Some contemplators, sometimes I see in some of our review sessions below, also some seem to truly work hard on the mind. Some are continuously even more externally scattered than Ananda. There's still a bit of that tendency. Just now Ananda said, Buddha, I don't know whether my seeing nature has contracted or been obstructed. I don't understand this meaning. Could you please explain this to me again? Then the Buddha told Ananda, all phenomena in the world, large, small, internal, external, all activities, each belongs to the sphere of objective appearances. You should not say that seeing has expansion or contraction. He said here, all phenomena in the entire world, whether large or small, external or internal, left or right, all phenomena in the world, each and all completely belong to the sphere of objective appearances. Here, objective appearances, Chang Shui also explained, large and small, internal and external are relative conventional designations. Large and small, internal and external, all are actually our conventional designations. Whether all phenomena or conceptual thoughts, all large and small, etc., are mutually dependent, mutually designated. There is no actual internal and external, large and small. They are all our objective appearances, that is, manifestations of external objects. Some Tibetan translations render this as included within manifestations of external objects. You should not say that your own seeing has expansion or contraction. Your own seeing has now contracted. You should not speak this way. So what he's saying here is all related to our mind. All external manifestations are actually manifestations of mind, conventional designations of mind. Then your mind becomes particularly small, merely conceptual appearances of mind. The records of the source mirror also says, ordinary people's minds among all phenomena arbitrarily make things large or small. Like when a person is anxious, their mind contracts and becomes small. When peaceful, stable and prosperous, the mind becomes expansive. I think this is quite good because we ordinary people, actually among all phenomena according to our own inclinations, might perceive large things, small things, many different matters, including when something happens, if you're someone with a relatively narrow mind, wow, you feel it's an earth-shaking matter. If your mind is relatively expansive, even if it's an earth-shaking matter for them, it truly remains unmoved. So this is like when a person is extremely, extremely anxious, then your mind becomes particularly small. For example, the mind becomes very narrow, immediately crying, immediately making a fuss, all sorts of things when the mind is anxious. If your mind is relatively calm, or if you're happy and prosperous at such times, people all feel that, the mind is very expansive. Actually, we ordinary people are truly quite frightening. When anxious, we can create any kind of trouble. When the mind is relatively relaxed, then external matters are also no big deal. Therefore, ordinary people have this difference. The Buddha also explains here that actually the large and small of the external world are all conceptual designations. You should not say your seeing has large or small, seeing has expansion or contraction, seeing has various changes. You cannot say this. Why can't you say this? To facilitate understanding, the Buddha gives an analogy below. For example, a square vessel contains square space. He gives an analogy here. For example, if there's a square-shaped vessel like a box, a case, or a square-shaped small house, then at that time you find that the space inside is also square-shaped because the outer vessel is already fixed. When it's fixed, then the space inside is definitely square-shaped. In this case, I ask you, Ananda, I ask you again, in this square vessel, the square space that is seen, is it definitely square or not definitely square? He asks below. In this square-shaped vessel, the square-shaped thing that is seen, is its square-shaped space. Ananda also acknowledges this. The other party also acknowledges, indeed it's like this. We now also know if there's a square-shaped box in this place, then the space inside is definitely square-shaped. This we should all be able to commonly acknowledge. In this case, there's a question, or I ask you, this square-shaped space inside, is it definitely square? Is it definitely a square? This space inside, is it definitely square-shaped, or is it not definitely square, although there's such space inside? But this space is not definitely square-shaped. There are only two answers. Either you say this space inside is definitely square, or you say it's not definitely square space. Then if the other party says it's definitely square, if the other party answers saying the space inside this vessel is definitely, decidedly square-shaped, if it's decidedly square-shaped, place a round vessel instead, the space should not become round. Then if inside this square shape you place a teacup again, or place a round-shaped thing again, then isn't the space inside transformed into a round shape again? But in this case, according to your assertion, it shouldn't be like this because you just confirmed it. Actually, this is basically the same as logical debate. Jiben Shang Shi Xiang Tong Ba. First, he already asked him whether the space inside is square-shaped. If it is, then it definitely cannot change. Of course, if the other party says, mine was square-shaped at the beginning but later became round-shaped, then that shows yours is not square-shaped, it can change. The other party acknowledges something truly existing. If it's truly existing, then square-shaped is square. It cannot have round shape. This is definite. Those who have studied ornament of the middle way, everyone understands this very clearly. If you say this is square-shaped, then we place a round-shaped vessel. The space inside should not become round. Why? Because you acknowledge that the space inside is square, and if this square is truly existing, it can never change. If it changes, then there's no substantial thing inside, it changes all the time. This changing square is no longer called square-shaped. If square-shaped sometimes becomes round, sometimes becomes triangular, sometimes becomes rectangular, then that shows it itself has no inherent nature. This is the first aspect of the answer to him, if it's not definite. If you say the space in this square-shaped vessel is not definite, it's not necessarily square-shaped. In the square vessel, there should be no square space. Then in your square-shaped vessel, there should be no square-shaped space. Why? Because it's indefinite. If it's indefinite with indefinite things, you cannot determine they are square-shaped because it's not necessarily square-shaped. If it's not necessarily square-shaped, then you cannot consider it square-shaped. This is relatively easy to understand. Of course, the main point here is, what does the space inside represent? It represents our mind. Then the external square shape, triangular shape, or large vessel, these represent external things because our mind is continuously bound by external objects. Actually, we might be the same as Ananda when we're in a small room, when we visualize in our mind, oh, it seems I'm meditating in a small room. At this time, my mind seems to have become small. Then when I'm in a vast, boundless place, wow, my mind also begins to become expansive. We often, some people say, go to mountaintops. The mind should broaden a bit or something like that. But in this case, actually, mind has no substance. It's like space. But the things that bind externally, external objects, Ananda could never distinguish clearly. The Buddha uses this analogy to directly cut through his kind of obstructed mind, because here the seeing nature is unobstructed, without any obstruction. Actually, space is without obstruction. Mind is also without obstruction. This is the meaning. So below, you said you don't know where this meaning lies. Didn't you just say, I don't understand this point? The nature of this meaning is thus, how can there be a where? You just said, I don't understand things like large and small. Why is it like this? At the four celestial kings, you see everything vast and boundless, but when you reach your own small room, it becomes very small, so you don't know what to do about this. Just now, Ananda said this at the beginning, I don't understand this principle. Actually, this kind of seeing nature should be without large or small. Fundamentally, what's explained here is seeing nature has no large or small. Seeing nature has no expansion or contraction. Seeing nature has no above or below and no good or bad, beautiful or ugly, etc. So its meaning is just like this. What else don't you understand? What is there? It's just like this, being just like this. What else have you not seen? It should be like this.
Through this analogy, it should be relatively easy to understand. Then he further explains to Ananda, Ananda, if you wish to enter into that which has neither square nor round, just remove the square container, and space itself has no square shape. If you want to enter into a state that has neither square nor round such a realm, then you should first only destroy the square container, destroy the square and round aspects of the vessel. In this way, the essence of space has no square or round. The meaning below should also be explained this way. If you want a vast and boundless realm, then you need to destroy this vessel. In this way, the essence of space has no square or round. You should not say, further remove the square characteristics where space is located. You cannot say, oh, now I'm preparing to remove the space inside this kind of square space. I need to further remove this square characteristic of space. This is unnecessary to say because what binds us is actually not space. It should be external objects. If the attachment to these external objects is destroyed, then all such characteristics can be destroyed. Master Hanshan says here, for example, our mind is generally already bound within the faculties and body. If we destroy internal and external, then the true mind has no large or small. So regarding these objects, if we don't grasp at them, then all of samsara is also eliminated. When seeing objects as selfless, all seeds of existence are destroyed. The 400 stanzas on the middle way also teaches this. Many Madhyamaka texts also teach this. The objects that we see actually arise from grasping. If we understand that external mountains and rivers and great earth, any external phenomena, including our own body, when we realize the selflessness of these, then all seeds of samsara are naturally eliminated. If, as you ask, when entering the room, seeing contracts and becomes small, if you ask when entering a small room, then his seeing has already contracted. If this is the case, then when you look up at the sun, do you extend your seeing to reach the sun's surface? Below this, he gives a pith instruction. You say that when you enter your meditation room, what you see contracts. In that case, there's a method. You open the skylight or go to the doorway and look into space. The sun is so vast. Space is so vast. So this is easily resolved. This is also for Ananda. Ananda was feeling rather inferior at that time. When he returned to his own meditation room, he couldn't see anything. My seeing has also contracted. You don't need to worry. You should be able to look through the skylight. When looking at the sun disk there, the sun disk is so vast. In this way, your originally contracted understanding has already expanded. If walls and buildings can constrain and sever seeing, drilling a small hole, wouldn't there be traces of reconnection? If you say it's because there are walls, these buildings, these structures, that can constrain your understanding or separate what you see. In this case, there's still a method. You drill a small hole in that wall, a small opening, drill a small hole. Isn't that very good? The continuity of what you originally saw can also be easily seen. All of this, isn't it very easy? This continuity of unobstructed penetration that you had before is all possible. This reasoning is not correct, so your way of speaking actually has nothing unreasonable about it. What you mentioned before is unreasonable. Here Hanshan says, no need to seek the true, just rest the seeing. No need to seek the true means we don't seek the true mind outside. No need to seek the true. Then what is the only thing that's necessary? Rest the seeing. Rest means to reduce. Only by reducing can one see. The meaning is, if we want to awaken constantly trying to see a luminous thing, this is very difficult if we reduce our previous grasping. At the true existence of all phenomena, reduce these attachments. When these are reduced, we naturally realize the nature of mind. Oh, originally my mind is just like this. At this time it becomes very easy. So here, because he belongs to a realist school after all, he's oriented toward the external. Still seeking outwardly, the mind is seeking outwardly. If the mind seeks outwardly, it can never be found. Below he gives such a pith instruction. All beings from beginningless time mistake themselves for objects, lose their original mind, and are turned by objects. So this indeed explains a very profound principle. All beings in the three realms of samsara from beginningless time, obscured by ignorance and afflictions driven by karma, mistake themselves for objects. Originally our own mind is luminous and pure. Such a self considers there to be truly existing things outside, continuously wandering among external objects. In this way, we lose our original mind. Finally, we lose our original face. Turned by objects. How pitiful. Finally, we don't control external objects, but are turned by objects, turned by external things. Being turned by external things is like what we call a prince wandering in the world, originally having the nature of holding royal position, but due to not recognizing it, wandering among the common people. I think this phrase is quite good. From beginningless time, we truly, whether the Sutra school teaches or the Tantra school teaches, we still have our essential nature, but we just don't. According to the Tantra school, Samantabhadra Buddha has already awakened. If he hadn't awakened, there would be no way to proclaim the truth for beings. Because he awakened in the future, he can guide beings. But many of us beings have lost this path. Therefore, in this state, they perceive large and perceive small. So in this kind of state, we beings sometimes perceive large, sometimes perceive small, sometimes all sorts of things. Because when we're deluded, perhaps even our daily values are different. Today I'm very happy. Then we say, I'm very miserable. Then we say our world is vast and boundless. Then we say our world is very narrow. All sorts of things, one after another. Our world, indeed, all kinds of appearances manifest because we're turned by external objects. If one can turn objects, then one is the same as the Tathagata body and mind, perfectly luminous, the immovable place of awakening. This phrase is also very famous in the Han region. Everyone knows it. If we can turn objects. The meaning is, if one can turn objects rather than being turned by external conditions, not having external conditions turn us, enabling us to turn external conditions, not following external conditions. In this way, we're the same as the Tathagata. Then, body and mind perfectly luminous, the body becomes purified, the mind becomes purified. Perfectly luminous means attaining the Tathagata's immovable mandala, immovable place of awakening. The Platform Sutra says, when mind is deluded, Dharma flower turns it. When mind is awakened, it turns Dharma flower. There's such a saying. Everyone who has studied the Platform Sutra knows this. During the Ming Dynasty, there was Master Chuandeng who also said similarly, when mind is awakened, it turns Shurangama. When mind is deluded, Shurangama turns it. Both mind confusion and mind awakening are explained this way. Actually, Master Chuandeng was extremely proficient in the Shurangama Sutra. He became a monk from childhood. Later, he studied the Lotus Sutra, then became very proficient in the Lotus Sutra. Later, he had a certain awakening. Later, there was someone called Zen Master Baisong. Under Zen Master Baisong, he studied the Shurangama Sutra. During the process of studying the Shurangama Sutra, once he asked Master Baisong about the great samadhi in the Shurangama Sutra. What does it mean, the great meditation? Because the Shurangama Sutra continuously discusses great meditation. At this time, Zen Master Baisong stared with wide eyes, meaning perhaps staring once or something like that. Through this circumstance, he entered realization, awakening on the spot. Later, he also taught Dharma at Gaoming Temple. Later, he composed profound meaning of the Shurangama Sutra and 3 other treatises. Then, at age 75, holding the characters Wonderful Dharma Lotus Sutra in his hand while singing aloud, he demonstrated passing away. So he was truly extraordinary. According to his explanation, if our mind is awakened, then we turn Shurangama. The meaning is, if we're not turned by external conditions, then we're completely the same as the Tathagata's state. At that time, body and mind are perfect. When body and mind are perfect, Master U Yi interprets this body as the pure Dharmakaya, and the mind is also pure. How does he interpret it? Everything also becomes pure. He interprets it this way. It seems like mind is like an illusion, but in Tibetan it says, If we can turn external objects were equal to the Tathagata, then our originally pure, originally luminous body and mind are also perfect, then continuously dwelling in the mandala of suchness, immovably. This is also a very high state. Everyone should also remember this passage from beginningless time up to these points. These are very important terms in the Chan school. At one tip of hair, able to contain and receive the lands of the 10 directions. At this time, at the tip of one hair, one can contain the entire 3,000 great thousand world system, or all lands of the 10 directions. In one dust particle, countless Buddhas. Such states from the Avatamsaka Sutra can also be manifested. In such states, everything can be manifested. This is seeing nature without obstruction. The 7th question. Below is another question. Today we'll conclude the Shurangama Sutra here.
Bandharangara Banma Sadarda